There's a whole machine that works because everybody does what they're supposed to.
A marshal in a mining facility finds he's on his own with assassins gunning for him. I once had a contract taken out on me after I forgot to rewind the tape of Kramer versus Kramer before returning it to Blockbuster.
It's just the only explanation.
But apparently,
in space, no one can hear you scream.
Outland.
If you're looking for money, you're smarter than you look. If you're not, you're a lot dumber.
I'm probably a lot dumber.
Outland is a 1981 movie that's a mishmash of genres, but basically it's a western, but set in space. You take the basic plot of the 1952 western classic High Noon, mix it with the aesthetic of Alien, and then wrap it all up in the trappings of a hard-boiled neo-noir thriller, and you either end up with an entertaining and unique film, or you might just get the same result as a kid who gets to play with the do-it-yourself soda machine at the all-you-can-eat restaurant.
Oh, good for you.
Outland starts off with Marshal O'Neill, a man who spells his name in a way that's going to set my spell checker off. He's starting a new job as the head of the police force in the mining colony on one of Jupiter's moons, Io. His wife has had enough of his bleak postings and has just taken their son to the space station while they await transport back to Earth.
I work these people hard, and I let them play hard.
At his introduction to the colony's senior staff, the general manager, Shepard, puts O'Neill in his place. This is a profitable operation, so don't rock the boat.
He's an asshole. He's a very powerful asshole. Don't mess with him.
Meanwhile, the number of deaths on the colony seems to have skyrocketed over the past year. In space, or at least in the science as presented by Outland, a tear in your spacesuit while in the vacuum of space will end with you exploding in seconds. It's not necessarily all that scientifically accurate, but then accuracy wouldn't let you have bodies exploding. Outland's unique selling proposition is people exploding into a pulpy mess when things don't go so well. And in the film Outland, things often don't go so well.
Yuck.
Mining is a tough gig. Space mining is an even tougher gig, especially when it takes a year in hibernation just to get to work. When you're there, there's nothing but work and drugs and hookers and acting as reference for Mass Effect. And then when you quit the job, it's really hard to sell your unwanted spacesuit since everyone here is incredibly suspicious about second-hand spacesuits, especially if they've got raspberry jam stains down the front. I mean, one day you put too much filling in your sandwich and then boom, you're stuck with a very expensive suit. An encounter with a drug-crazed miner leads O'Neill to investigate a rise in the use of amphetamines, which helps the miners work hard, but with the teeny tiny side effect that it turns them psychotic. Intense actor Steven Berkoff as rogue user Sagan may not have yet been typecast at this point in his career, but no future director was ever likely to see this and cast him as a kindly music teacher inspiring generations of students.
So when a person exposes himself to zero-pressure atmosphere, there isn't a whole lot left to inspect.
O'Neill bonds with the grouchy Dr. Lazarus, who seems to be the only person not in on what's going on. The conspiracy to import the drugs is almost an open secret, where, for the most part, people here just want to mind their own business. O'Neill's second-in-command, Sergeant Montone, admits that he's in on it, being paid to look the other way. O'Neill does a little digging, but fairly soon confronts Shepard, whose first response is to ask him how much he wants. O'Neill's price is Shepard's head. Now, it's all very civil, with quiet threats where nobody shouts or rants. Then more people end up dead, first a hired goon, and then Sergeant Montone. Now, call me paranoid, but if I didn't know any better, I'd say that there's something just a little bit fishy going on.
Something's wrong there, isn't it?
Shepard calls in some hitmen, and that's when a countdown begins, where the entire facility is awaiting the arrival of a shuttle with some killers on board.
I could use a little help. I thought so.
O'Neill is isolated, where he cannot count on a single member of his police force for backup.
Where are your men?
My men are shit.
Nobody wants to get involved, only Dr. Lazarus. The shuttle arrives early, and then begins a game of cat and mouse, where O'Neill tries to outwit the two killers, while everybody else on the base keeps their head down. Lazarus offers some support.
I was afraid you'd say something like that.
But it is up to O'Neill to trap the killers so that, yes, this is Outland, so he can have many ways to have people suddenly exposed to the vacuum of space and explode into a mass of ketchup. After watching Outland, I will never again look at the killer in my cupboard the same way again. No, next to him. One last killer in a spacesuit is one of O'Neill's own men, but he too is bested. O'Neill's calls the whole operation to, well, I suppose realistically, stop for about 5 minutes until the company finds another yes man, but at the very least, O'Neill sends a message to his wife that he'll be joining them for the trip back to Earth.
Sounds wonderful.
Nothing here is wonderful. It works. That's enough.
Outland is a film that, unless you were around in the early 80s when the film was in release, or later on home video or television, or you were reading magazines like Starburst or Starlog, you may not have heard all that much about the film.
This blood is from a dead person.
Very good.
Writer and director Peter Hyams had an up and down career where he'd have a hit film and then a not so hot movie, rinse and repeat. His conspiracy-laden thriller Capricorn 1 had been a decent-sized success in 1977, in amongst all of his less financially successful films. In the early 80s, he'd wanted to do a western at a time when western movies did about as well as a champagne flute at a steamroller's high school reunion. I don't know what that means, I just assume it means westerns weren't doing well at the box office. Peter Hyams wrote a western anyway, but one transposed to a futuristic space setting. Instead of a frontier town, he set his story on a mining colony on Io. Instead of cowboys, we had miners. Instead of villains clutching their chest after being shot, they explode into beetroot coleslaw. Alan Ladd Jr. had been the executive at 20th Century Fox who had supported Star Wars, and for his trouble was forced out. He did what a lot of former studio heads do. He started a production company to produce his own movies, with Outland being one of its earliest releases.
We're all professionals.
I'm sure we are.
High Noon is often cited as an influence. In that film, a marshal finds he's got to face down some villains on his own when they come to kill him at High Noon. Here, that plot point is mirrored by everybody waiting for a shuttle to bring the killers to Io, complete with a countdown. And of course, O'Neill's pleas for help falling on deaf ears. But comparisons to westerns aside, Outland is set in a grimy, metallic future influenced by harder-edge science fiction films like Alien. There are no sleek starships here, but it's a very lived-in installation, a lot of mesh floors, and sets full of details. For most of its runtime, Outland is a gritty 70s cop thriller. O'Neill runs down perps where he doesn't always knock them out with one punch. It can be quite messy, and I'm not just talking about decompression.
And then it fries your brain.
O'Neill doesn't know who he can trust, but in the end he really can't trust anybody apart from Dr. Lazarus, who's the only person willing to stick out their neck for him. Once the assassins show up, the film is all about tension. The tension between the assassins on the one hand and a cop played by a man who has a hard time saying the word assassins without making the crew burst out laughing.
I've never heard that one before. That's really funny.
Outland is a really well-made piece of film. Its production design is outstanding, where this feels like a lived-in world. Even where the computers look charmingly old hat, this is still a film that rarely feels all that dated. The effects hold up extraordinarily well, and for the gorehounds, this is not just a gritty world, but a really messy, splatty world. I, for one, would not like to be the guy who has to mop up. The direction is really first class, with little to criticise, other than the ending can feel a little sluggish at times. Hyams was going for a tense atmosphere over pace, but it does slow things down just a bit.
That's what we need here, a goddamn hero.
Outland has a dim look, partly down to the use of practical lighting built into the sets, partly down to the soft-looking film stocks of the day, and partly due to the smoky haze that permeates many scenes. Most of Outland is filmed in fairly low-light situations, things like dingy bars or dark corridors and the like. So in effect, it's party time for film grain. The film is enlivened with a score from famed composer Jerry Goldsmith.
I couldn't look at your face and say what I'm about to say. I just couldn't.
It's a Sean Connery movie, at a time when the term Sean Connery movie seemed like an uncomfortable reminder of just how fickle a movie star's career trajectory could be. Even the biggest star in the world at one time could end up in a place where their name doesn't really sell tickets the way they used to. The transition from leading man to character actor was one that many stars would grapple with. Sean Connery had been James Bond, but by the early 80s, he had been James Bond a really long time ago. His subsequent non-Bond movies had tended to be mostly forgotten about by moviegoers. Occasionally, he'd make a good film that was underappreciated, a film that would later become a cult hit, or he'd appear in a successful movie with an ensemble cast. But on the whole, most of the films where he was either first or second billed tended to underperform at the box office. Outland did not reverse that trend, which is a shame because it is one of his better roles from this financially fallow period.
I'm not trying to prove anything. That stuff they're selling is killing people.
O'Neill's family heads home. He throws himself into his work, where he finds himself with a target painted on his chest just for doing his damn job. I'm much the same after I took that job as a nerf tester. Of course, he's a former James Bond who survives one assassination attempt by just happening to be wearing an anti-garrote collar, which is available at any good menswear retailer, price $79.99.
That was thoughtful.
Peter Boyle was the rather softly spoken company man Shepard, where he's weary at having his smooth operation upended by the latest Marshal. It's implied that he'll lose his job, and there are some television versions that add a specific note about an impending arrest.
Oh, fuck it.
But all we get is a smack in the gob, and a smack in the gob is surprisingly satisfying. Prolific character actor James B. Sicking would be well known to TV viewers for Hill Street Blues, and later on for being Doogie Howser's dad.
It's gonna hit the fan around here, and I want to watch it happen.
Frances Sternhagen was a well-known actress, but many will remember her best for appearing as Ma Claven in Cheers. And it's a little-known fact that her future on-screen son, John Ratzenberger, has a very small role in Outland. Outland was filmed at Pinewood Studios in the UK, but used many of the small army of North American actors living and working in the UK at the time.
He sent me here to this pile of shit because he think I belong here.
Outland has a few establishing effects shots at the start of the movie, but the bulk of the film is shot on standard sets. And then towards the end, we suddenly get these large expansive vistas of characters moving in and around giant installations, both inside and outside the complex. Outland was an early user of Introvision, an advanced version of front projection where the backdrops were projected onto the actors. When it works, it's quite neat and allows large portions of effect sequences to be captured in camera rather than requiring post-production.
Those stupid bastards are taking polydichloric euthymol.
In Outland, the killer amphetamine is never given a snazzy name, leading to Sean Connery being saddled with saying this.
The lab report says you were carrying 4 ounces of polydichloric euthymol.
Fortunately, for the rest of the film, he refers to it as PDE, rather than polydichloric euthymol, space speed.
You know, I've misjudged you. You're not stupid. You're crazy.
Outland was released in May of 1981, and while it initially did okay, it did not end up as a film with box office legs. It was not an outright failure, but profitability from theatrical release alone would be dicey. The film was the sort of thing that most people will have discovered on home video or television, though it's also not turned out to be some influential cult hit like Blade Runner the following year, another Ladd Company production that didn't set box office records. I was aware of the movie and may have seen it as a rental at one point, but I obviously remembered very little of it before watching it again when it came out on DVD. Watching it again now, it's not at all bad, if not necessarily outstanding. The cast is excellent and there is some great action and a foreboding and tense atmosphere, much like sitting in a dentist's waiting room. Outland is a decent and enjoyable enough film with some fantastic world building and visuals. And it's a better movie than its almost forgotten status as the Exploding Space Giblets movie would suggest.
Well, I have to go now.
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
I'm unpleasant. I'm not stupid. Of course, I'm sure I can count.